Welcome to the Santa Clara County Office of Education's Visual Thinking Strategies. This is part 2 of having a conversation around visual thinking strategies. And it is vlog number 7 of our distance learning series. We welcome you and we look forward to having a conversation with you today. I'm Karen Larson and with me is
Jenna Cotta, and we're at the Santa Clara County Office of Education, and this is our vlog series. So we wanted to welcome you today, and I just love this GIF that one of you put into this slide deck because we are going to be talking about using photography, and today we're going to also be talking about using video to really engage your students. So I'm going to have Karen talk a little bit about what you guys talked about yesterday.
Yeah, we're going to follow the same format as we did yesterday in talking about visual thinking. We're going to provide 3 different tips along the way, and then give you an opportunity to think about each of those tips and how they might apply in your classroom or your learning environment. But why are we talking about visual thinking? It is one of those opportunities that reaches all the learners in your classroom. It's a concept that addresses both Universal Design for Thinking and your LPAC goals, where every child, regardless of their language levels or where they're at in their learning, can participate fully and really spur some conversation and engagement and building connections in their classroom. It's very engaging for all students, whether you're supplying the photographs and the images that they're learning about and thinking about, or whether they're even having that opportunity to find images for their learning. It also allows students, and all these strategies that we're talking about, allows students to think beyond just the facts that they see in the picture. Part of it is determining who do you see, what is it, what do you think is going on, but then it stretches their thinking beyond that and gives them an opportunity to predict, to defend their position, to wonder, to ask questions about what could be happening or what might be going on, and sharing those ideas with their classmates. So it really pushes their thinking in a very fun, engaging way. And it is also a very important digital citizenship tool. And I'm gonna let Jenna talk about that.
Yeah, Karen already mentioned that, we can really encourage students to start to use their own images. I mean, right now, with everybody stuck at home, a lot of them will have access to at least a camera where they can take pictures and share them. And I'm going to share some of those things today throughout our slides and how you can encourage the creation of your own images to use in the classroom.
Yeah, it's a great tool for that. Just to, again, talk a little bit about what we just shared yesterday. These are the 3 ideas that we talked about. The first idea was what's going on in the picture. And if you think about the picture we just saw of the gal getting ready for a parade, that picture is almost 20 years old now. Having students notice and wonder, think about what could be happening and explaining their own thinking in about pictures. We talked about idea 2, which one doesn't belong. Traditionally a math concept, but gives students an opportunity to explain their thinking. If you just take a look at this picture here, we could probably come up with a number of which one of these fruits just doesn't belong. And as long as we explain our thinking, we're right. There's no right or wrong answer here. And then idea number 3, would you rather, also has both math and literacy connections, explaining, giving you an opportunity to defend your position or argue a point. Again, a good opportunity to share some really cool images and some resources with you on all 3 of these. And you'll find all those resources on the notes for vlog number 6. in the list that we'll be sharing with you with all of our resources and such. So that's what we talked about yesterday. So let's move on to 3 ideas for today.
Great. So our first idea is 8 parts, and I want to send a big shout out to John Crippo and Marlena Hepburn, who wrote the EduProtocol Field Guide, and this is one of the strategies that you can find there. And what this is this is a routine for learning the 8 parts of speech. And let me actually just click onto their resource page. So they have a template for this, but what they do is they use an image to spark engagement and to complete this template. So going back to the slides, I have a picture. Here's one of the pictures that I took, and these are 2 of my pets. I actually have 2 dogs and 2 turtles, and this is Riley and my turtle, Tucker. And this is an example of an image that I might use for the 8 parts. And what students would do is take a look at the picture and come up with the different parts of speech. So verbs, adverbs, go all the way through this until they have all of these words that they can use in order to write a paragraph. And one thing that John Cripple always talks about is reps. So lots of reps. If students practice doing this over and over, they're going to get really fast at completing these 8 parts of speech. They'll know them really well. They'll know how to use them in writing a paragraph, and it could really help push and increase their vocabulary. So
one cool thing about that template too is that once you create the template, it drops it into your Google Drive, and then you can push that out to your students through Google Classroom, and it'll make that copy for them so they can have that document sitting in their drive and be working on it as you put out that lesson.
Definitely. And I just clicked on the link to the Union School District Teacher Toolkit for 8 parts, and they've adapted this, and they have little parts. So if you want to get some of the templates for the younger grades, you can find that in there. And there are even some slides for some math ideas of how to take this and adapt it for math. So you can go ahead and check that out also. So are we ready to move on to our question?
Our question today.
How can the 8-part strategy support literacy at your grade level?
I think that, something that teachers can think about, and you showed it briefly with what Union did, you having the little parts, but then maybe too, if you're teaching older kids, you might want to revise it again to help make it more effective for whatever your Common Core standards are asking for.
Yeah, that's a great idea. And a lot of teachers are using this and they're posting about it. So you might see examples if you go on Twitter or if you check out the EduProtocols page. So you can see how it's being used in different ways. Oh, here's a template for math reps. Mm-hmm. So there's lots of different ideas that, that teachers are coming up with as they're starting to remix this idea.
Interesting, real cool.
Okay. Our next tip is, our next idea is inspiration for storytelling. So Karen, do you want to explain this New York Times?
Well, that picture just has so much going on in it. And it's just one of the many images we found at the New York Times, images of the day, which we spoke a lot about yesterday, but we have the link provided again today. Just sharing these images that fuels the thinking for telling a story. In this case, in this image, picking one of the people and telling their story. The concept of walking a mile in somebody's shoes. What's, if that person has a particular, what's their life like? and then sharing those stories out with one another. This is a great image about social distancing and our people are staying home in their own spaces. But what's going on in those places? How is their lives changing because they're needing now to shelter in place? What we've suggested with these sort of images is using a visual thinking strategy called, there's a couple you could use, but one is called Compass Point. And by using Compass Point, you're asking the students to take a look at 4 different aspects of the picture. And we put a link to Compass Point in the notes too to help explain that. But if I was a teacher with students, I'd ask them, what excites you about this picture? What's engages you and makes you interested in what goes on there? What worries you? What are you thinking about? What information do you need more information about? And can you come up with some sort of statement about what's happening here, and really have that statement be a personal one, a judgment call. This picture here in particular is called Shelter in Place. I think kids have a lot of worries going on. There's a lot of information they need to know. And then they can really make a point about what they know. Like, this worries me. I have concerns. I think we're going to be okay. I have faith in my teachers that are going to be there to help me. Letting kids have that opportunity to share their thoughts, their thinkings around a topic that maybe they're unsure of or need a little support with. So that's the Compass Point strategy. And the other strategy is the Notice and Wonder. We talked about that yesterday, and I think just asking kids to think about what they see and hear and list all the things that they see going on, and then just be able to ask questions and identify, and just put out there what it is that they're thinking about. Going beyond just noticing what's in the picture, but then spurring that sort of subconscious thinking of, I wonder what's happening. I wonder why that person's doing that. And maybe even putting out there some ideas why they might be doing it. And I noticed, Jenna, you added Unsplash Instance as one of the sources. This is a really cool tool.
Yeah, so this is actually one of my favorite Chrome extensions. I mean, it's so simple. All it does is every time I open up a new tab, it shows me a different picture right here. And it shows me a different picture from Unsplash. And this is a collection of photographs that people are sharing for free. So any picture that you get from Unsplash, you're free to share it. But you'll also always see the person who took the photograph. So if you want to practice good digital citizenship and give them credit for the photograph, there's always that option too. And one thing that I like to do with these pictures, if ever I see a picture that pops up on my screen that I think could tell a really good story, what I do is I click on this icon right here and it downloads, let me see, is that the right one to click on? Oh, download. If I click on download and it downloads to my computer, and then what I do from there is I stick it into this Notice and Wonder folder that I've created in my Google Drive. And now I have a collection of all of these pictures that I think can tell a good story. And originally, this idea for idea number 5 was going to be called Inspiration for writing, but I changed it to storytelling because what I like to do is I like to use these images for storytelling for math also. Because if we look at something like this, what kind of math story can we tell? And I like to use the Notice and Wonder protocol. What do you notice? What do you wonder? And get into like students creating different kinds of math problems. So you're going to see lots of images of food in here, but you're also going to see lots of images of architecture and other kinds of really interesting things that might make students really want to dig a little bit deeper or ask some really great questions and, take the learning in, their own direction. So that's a strategy that I really like, which really leads us up to the question, how can this strategy be used in other content areas?
I love this question. Hi, this is Abby.
Hi, Abby.
I I love this question because typically we think of narrative and storytelling as an ELA focus, and it lives in an ELA classroom or an ELA block. But if you take a look at images or even data points or graphs, all of those pieces tell a story about something. And so if you remember yesterday we talked about what's going on in the graph, which is a lot of images of data points that are like represented in different ways. And one that is coming to mind right now is of the scarf. You remind me of the scarf, Karen, of this lady. She knitted a row of scarf each day for her commute. And then the scarf was, I don't know how long, a few feet long. And then the question was, what story does it tell about her commute? And so even though we think about stories in a fictional sense, it can be very much in a like historical sense or in a fact-based sense. Oh, you have it so fast.
Yes.
And also tied to also tied to another point, we had another webinar about us being historians right now. So when people look back at this time 20 years from now and they look at the images or the social media posts, what story will it tell of our time now?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I see it working in science as well, telling the story of, for little ones, the seed that's growing, or, understanding how viruses spread, telling the story of a virus that's spreading. I think storytelling, as you said, Abby, just kind of can relate to any aspect of the learning that's going on, especially in math. Being able to write and understand why a problem worked itself out the way it did, either from your own personal learning, or explaining how the problem works, or these wonderful math stories, these number stories that students are writing. I think it behooves more teachers to use storytelling in all the content areas.
Yeah, and when I'm thinking about science, you just made me think of, watching time-lapse videos and seeing how things have changed over time, and finding out why these things are happening.
Yeah.
So there's so many opportunities. I love all of these ideas. All right, so we are getting into our final tip, and that is using video to develop literacy skills. So, I mean, we live in a time where kids are on YouTube all the time. I mean, it's not just kids. My dad is a huge YouTube fan. I mean, he's on all the time, mostly looking for really cool music artists. But why not use some of those videos in the classroom? And this image right here, I don't know if you remember this commercial. This is the Volkswagen commercial with this kid who is being Darth Vader. And if I'm thinking about some things that we can do in the classroom with this, Abby had reminded us of using these commercials for a 5-finger summary. So that 5-finger summary is, somebody I'm gonna get this wrong, but is it somebody wanted, but somebody wanted,
yeah,
but so, and then.
Yeah. Got it.
Right? And I know I'm messing this up, but here, I actually did find an example of a teacher who had put this into a seesaw activity, right? And what if we just used different commercials for that? And would be great to take a look at this video from the perspective of the kid and what he's doing in this video, and it would be great to look from the perspective of the parents and what they're doing. So let's see. Is there anything else that I'm missing? One of the resources that we have on our page is a link to a bunch of commercials. So I know Abby had started a list of commercials. I took some of the commercials in her list and I added some of the newer commercials, some of them from this year's Super Bowl, which is a great place to look. You just make sure you go through those commercials and watch through them to see if they're appropriate for your kids.
Mm-hmm. And we've also attached the links to different descriptors for the 5-finger reading strategy as well to help explain that strategy. This is a great opportunity for students to share their own perspectives on what they see as they tell the story of what they see in the commercials, explain their strategy. It's a hugely creative and engaging strategy, and really that also serves our second language and EL students because they too can tell the story from their perspectives and share that with their classmates.
So our food for thought is, how can you use video to promote writing and other content area learning?
When I was teaching 8th grade more than 5th grade, but with 8th graders, if there was video associated with something we were reading, we would take time to engage in that as well. And the compare and contrast opportunities were huge. Whether it was Homer Simpson's, the Simpsons version of The Raven, when we were doing Edgar Allan Poe, or watching To Kill a Mockingbird when we were reading that story, or historical. We watched quite a bit of historical video when studying the Holocaust, and just, you know, kind of comparing what either Hollywood spin on what was happening in literature. Kids, the students really enjoyed that, and they had some pretty good debates on what was better. That's one idea.
I love that.
So video could play a role in any content area. I used to love just playing a video, and then at the time we used Today's Meet, and there must be some other tool out there that you can use, or students can just input their ideas into a Google Doc. But I would play the video and I'd ask students to, actually this was like a survival method and not much, like less a instructional tool and more of a survival method at the time. But I would play these videos that were very provocative for the students, and we would have to stop the video so much because they had so many questions. And so eventually I got so frustrated. I was like, okay, well, instead of stopping the video, here's Today's Meet, just put your questions in there. Mm-hmm. And what I found was that it was a great way for students to stay focused on the video the entire time, because then they really wanted to put the questions in. They were building language skills because they were practicing writing succinct questions, because they couldn't write really long questions because they would miss parts. And so there were so many skills that they were developing in this accidental method that I implemented at the time that I moved on to use in a different way moving like after that. But like video can play that role for any of the content in science, social studies, math. Going back to the idea of like just noticing and wondering what's happening in a video.
Yeah, I was just thinking as you were saying that any of these strategies that we talked about yesterday or today could be used using video just as well as, you know, using a still photo, and probably even more provocative if you're using a video.
Yeah. I know that I used to use a lot of animated shorts in the classroom. I mean, mostly for language arts, but those are fun ones to show. And you can find a lot of them on YouTube.
Yep.
I probably have a list. If I can dig it up, I will add a link to it in the notes.
I think we have one more bonus tip to share.
Oh, that is right. I did add this at the end. We're not going to go too much into it, but thinking about different types of story elements, I loved this tip. This comes from Apple's Everyone Can Create series, and this is their one on photo. Shout out to Nicole D'Alessio. I had the honor of working with her when I was in the Union School District, and she is so super creative. I mean, she has amazing photographs, and this was one of her ideas of, you know, taking a picture, and now we have all these tools where we can just draw over our pictures. It's so awesome. On my iPad, I just put it in the notes, I could draw over it, or in a tool like Seesaw, we can take pictures and have kids do something like this. I mean, this was created for like the iPad, but you can do it on anything now.
Google Drive.
This is just a create a personified picture. So those are a couple of examples, and we are going to get into some really creative ideas coming up in this vlog series. So stay tuned for that, because I think that's going to be a lot of fun, and maybe one of these days we can get Nicole to hop on with us and share some of the cool ideas that she has.
Sounds
But
good.
I've linked to the Everyone Can Create curriculum if you do want to check it out. So you can find all of that at our bit.ly, bit.ly/SCCOE vlog 7 notes. That's where you're going to find it. And Karen is going to be leading our very first computer science session. So I'm excited for that.
Yeah, thank you. We're going to start getting into tomorrow and into next week a little bit more of the content areas. And we'll kick it off with a little computer science, but we'll look forward to talking about math and such as we move on into next week. So I hope you can join me on Friday at 1 o'clock, and we'll talk a little bit about computer science, computational thinking, and some of the fun ways of engaging your students and your parents while they are at home.
Awesome. Can't wait for that.
Thanks.
So thank you all for watching, and we will see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.